match.
I think XL's going to be happy with this one regardless, but they're also going to be quite sad with the result.
Yeah, although don't forget, it is you have to lose 3 times before you're eliminated, so someone goes through to that top 8 stage and somebody will have at least 2 more goes at it, as they are on the hill at 2 and 0. And we are in here with Leroy playing either mid or face hunter, and Osha playing, which will almost certainly be elemental shaman.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised to see this be the kind of default elemental shaman, the kind of mid-range one that we've seen a lot of people running in across ladder and things. Obviously, I say we've seen a lot of people running. We've not really seen that much Hearthstone since the expansion, so I don't want to push that too much. Bittertide Hydra is going to be available in the deck of Leroy, and he's against a shaman. We could see a volcano. I'm just saying.
A volcano? That sounds pretty exciting.
That is pretty exciting. 15
damage spread across all kinds of things.
And if it hits Hydra's, hits 3 to face as well.
You just want that to happen, don't you? You just
desperate for that to happen.
Volcanic death.
That would be exceptional if that did happen here tonight. There, Osha's even got his webcam on the go. What a treat for us all here tonight. This is truly destiny right here. But Hunter up against Shaman, as we said. It looks like it is going to be that mid-range elemental Shaman, and this is looking fairly mid-range for Leroy, but then again, you can stick the Bittertide Hydra in an aggro deck just to kind of round out the curve and just finish the game off.
Yeah, it can be at the very top of the curve as your winning card. Scavenging Hyena is a card that wasn't played too much previously in Hunter, a little bit, but with all the Death Rattle minions now spawning more stuff, Scavenging Hyena is really helping those trades. You know, you just trade away and then your Hyena gets bigger and you keep a board as well. So Scavenging Hyena is a card that has been around since the start of Hearthstone. It's had various iterations of being good and not good, but it looks like it might be a card that is around to stay for this particular sort of next few weeks.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, and that's one of the things as well, is that there's a lot of cards that are still a bit up in the air. Different players are saying different things about what's the best card, what's going to be good, what's going to be, you know, broken in this expansion, and what they're really not convinced about. Now, we are going to see the first adapt of the Premiership here.
I kind of like the Poisoners here, actually. Yeah. Like you say, it's not a particularly good one, but if you Poisoners it, you take down that totem, protect your minions, and it will kill something else as well, unless there's a portal, but that would be a 3-mana portal, and would enable Leroy to get on board next turn. It's not an easy choice, though. It's kind of a garbage selection normally.
Yeah, but the poison isn't... I'd say poison is one of the more valuable options in general. It's going to go ahead with that one. Obviously, you can immediately get value by taking out this totem, but also, Tar Creeper comes out on curve here. You can immediately deal with that and proc your own Death Rattle, get another minion on the board. So, definitely not the worst case scenario. Now, obviously, there is the Maelstrom Pole, so the poison would be immediately eliminated if Osha did go for that, but it's kind of giving up tempo to go for that one.
Yeah, Leroy putting him on the spot here. One of the interesting things about playing the Adapt is if you play it on a minion that hasn't attacked yet, it's almost always better. But if you pick up the stealth, if you wanted the stealth, you should have attacked first, because you then can't attack. So sometimes on a particularly huge minion, you have to think about exactly what you want to get from it. But because you might want Wind Fury, Adapt's going to be a mechanic that people have to think about very, very hard.
Yeah, it's kind of, if you want to be aggressive, it's like, if you want Wind Fury, it's technically better to attack first just in case you get stealth and you don't get anything good for attacking afterwards. But then if you get 3 attack, then you lose that 3 damage if you had attacked. So Maelstrom Portal is going to be the play in the end. Sort of unsurprising, really, but it does mean that Osha's basically conceded tempo for this turn. Leroy is going to be able to reinforce this a little bit. He can go for a trade-in with the Beast while he has a Hyena in hand. He could start to wrap that up already.
Yeah, having a 3-2 plus a large Hyena would be a 4-3 Hyena plus Houndmaster in hand into the Hydra. That seems like a line that Leroy will have already analysed. Now he's looking at any other options. Is there any point in maybe bumping into the Secret Keeper? We've just seen, for instance, the Maelstrom Portal. Keep everything alive and don't trade. That would make less sense, but it's probably what the extra pause was about.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns with this line of play is if there is an unlucky Lightning Storm in hand, maybe it just rolls high and kills both minions. That would certainly not be a fun situation, but considering the Maelstrom Portal went down last turn, he would still have tempo as well, even if it's not the greatest. I think this is still the correct play to make in Leroy's situation. Now Osha, he has not the greatest turns ever, and this is one of the downsides to the Elemental Shaman, is most of the cards in this deck are really, really great value on the grounds that you played an elemental last turn. And if you have to waste like a turn 3 using a Maelstrom, you can't necessarily weave in those elementals. And now his Stone Shaper would have easily been the best play had he got an elemental down last turn. Now he doesn't get the Taunt or Divine Shield, so he has to go with the Tar instead.
And it's another turn without getting the elemental rolling, so...
Exactly. Well, the Tar is an elemental, so now he's got these, and that 5-drop off the top is a pretty nice find, but can you afford to go for the 5-drop? I think you have to play more defensive than that.
I mean, look at the damage Leeroy has here already. Next turn, he's going to be able to force maybe 8 through if he finds a way through here. He has to kill command this. That's not actually ideal.
Not ideal, but not the end of the world either. The other option available is you just drop your Bitter Tide Hydra, trade the 4-3 and trade the 5-1, hit face for 6.
Yep.
And then just sit with a Hydra on board, basically say, what are you going to do about it?
With damage in hand, obviously, from the kill command, and also your ongoing hero power, which is there to close out the game. The great thing is you do not have to do a huge amount of damage with your minions, just enough to make sure the hero power closes out. I don't think many of the Shamans are running heals anymore.
I have seen a couple of the versions of Elemental Shaman with the Water Speakers still.
Right.
But I don't think it's like a must-have. I know there are a lot of decks that don't run it. They want to be a little bit more aggressive than that. But certainly in this kind of matchup, the Water Speakers are a hefty boon.
So Leeroy using the kill command there to take down the minion. That costs him 5 damage to the face. Instantly, though, gets 4 damage from the Houndmaster out of it, and the Houndmaster's still a threat on the board. So rather than putting down the Hydra and going face with the 5, he goes this way. This will do recursive damage, and now the Hunter's Mark and the Hydra are going to just destroy this board. And although it's not actually going to be lethal, Osha's going to need to have healing in his deck, or he will lose this game.
Either needs healing, or he needs to find a second Hex off the top, because the Hydra has come down, and that
how
is
about
not a fun
the
situation.
new legendary for the Shamans? You can heal yourself for 12.
Oh, yeah, that is true. I actually have forgotten his name off the top of my head.
Kalimas?
But he is an 8-mana 7/7, and when you play him, if you played an elemental the turn before, then you invoke an elemental evocation, which is either 3 damage to all of their minions, heal 12 to your hero, deal 6 damage to their hero, or fill your board with 1/1 elementals.
So his way of getting that, it does seem reasonable, right? Shame you can't do all 4 at once, really.
Yeah, that would be...
Just mix it up with Fandral and win the game. He could have invoked that. He could have played the... I don't know what it's called. I don't know what anything's called now. The 5-mana guy that fetches
He could have played his Discover, but...
Draconid Operative.
It wouldn't have really been enough to get back in the game at that point anyway. So, very fast first one. The Face Hunter certainly paying off for Leeroy. He's going to take a lead in this series 1-0.
And he wasn't doing any shenanigans. I know, I like Leeroy, I like his shenanigans, even though I gave him a bit of a hard time last week, but good to see him paying attention and just getting the job done here.
Yeah,
or trying to.
Knuckling down in that one against his teammate, and I think that might be the reason why as well. This is an XL Grudge match. This is a very important game for both of these players, and I think Leeroy not only wants to kind of make sure that he gets this win in the bag, but also... You're gonna want to protect your teammates' pride just a little bit. You don't really want to rub it in the wounds.
Right, and it's nothing to do with anything else. These guys have started at the time they expected to start. It's how the scheduling has worked. And the next game with Jambray's bid for survival will be on straight after. That's not being moved either. So these guys are playing at the time they expected. So Leeroy has just come here with the game plan of I'm going to be sensible tonight. So far. Yeah,
nothing to do with the delays or anything like that. He's been perfectly fine in terms of the scheduling. It's going to be interesting to see what the rest of these decks are. I feel like Osha didn't have the greatest hand we've ever seen with the Elemental Shaman, but here we go. This looks a lot like a Caverns Rogue coming out from Leeroy.
It's interesting, actually, because...
Murlocs.
I haven't even seen the Beastie
Murloc Druid? Yeah. Question mark? This is going to be interesting.
This might not be a Caverns deck because he hasn't got the Cavern in his hand.
That's true.
And that's kind of what quests do. So
that is very true.
He's actually chosen to go with... It's because I've done that a million times already, Munch. Don't worry about it.
In hindsight, yeah.
So this is a Miracle Rogue, but it's playing Violet Teacher, which isn't in all of the builds, so I imagine...
So this is the one with the Corpse Flower?
Quite possibly, yes.
Basically, it's a what is it? 4-mana, 4/3.
5/3. And it's got the best animation ever.
Yeah.
It revives with 4 spells being cast.
Yeah. When it dies, it goes into like this dormant form, still takes a space on the board as well. But then if you cast 4 spells or use 4 cards in a turn, similarly to like Van Cleef in your Questing Adventurers, it goes off decks where you use lots of little cards and it'll come back to life. And there's, aside from silencing it, there's no way to actually remove that off the board, or silence or polymorph.
Right, and one of the hardest cards that people were finding to assess when the set came out was this Razor Petal last year. It's like, oh, how good's a Razor Petal going to be? It's a 1-mana thing spell, but it's a Razor Petal. Does 1 damage, and people are like, that sounds pretty poor. But nobody was really sure how it was going to interact with Van Cleef, with SI7, with Gadgets and Auctioneer. It turns out, when you put those cards in the deck, it interacts really well. As you can see there on the screen, Razor Petals are the 1/1s. So 2/2 minions always handy in Rogue. It loves its tempo. It's not a disaster on turn 2. As we see Sherazim being top decked here as well. That is the plant of which you did speak.
Yeah, Sherazim, the Corpse Flower, certainly an intriguing card. And one that I'm excited to see how Leeroy can use, because it's a card that, as we've already said, is kind of, especially when it was announced a while ago. Obviously, it was announced before a lot of the rest of the set, so people weren't sure. But a lot of people immediately kind of just said, this is going to be a terrible card. This is not going to be meta. This is not going to be good. But actually, in the grand scheme of things, with things like Violet Teacher being a classic card, there's always going to be opportunity for combo decks. But let's talk about Osha a little bit right now, because he's got a 2/5 Devilsaur Egg on the board. When that dies, that'll turn into a 5/5 Devilsaur as well. And that's a serious amount of board control that you can gain with a card like that, because they never want to trade into it. So you have this trading tool until you kill it yourself.
Yeah, unless it gets sapped. But yeah, I think it costs 5, so you might kill the egg before doing the sapping as well, just to really slow your opponent down. And looking to get quite an aggressive start, the Druid, and it hasn't done, but loads of stuff to come. We all know the damage that Finger can do. Just quickly going to mention about the Miracle Rogue as well. Most of these decks are running Arcane Giant, so the petals lower the casting cost of that, and you end up playing 2 8/8s for 0 plus a gigantic Edwin and say, deal with that.
Yeah. There is another line of play here for HelloLeeroy available, in that he has the Razor Petal Eviscerate, which is exactly 5 damage. Unfortunately, that leaves him with 1 mana remaining. It uses one of his combo tools in that Razor Petal, and he also kind of concedes tempo, which then, when we take a look at the hand of Osha, he has a bit of Tide Hydra. You do not want to concede tempo going into turn 5.
Although you really don't want to play your Bitter Tide against an unknown rogue list right now, because this can have a lot of Razor Petals, a lot of ping going on. It might even have a patches. You can take a lot of damage very quickly. Just a note that when the Sherazim gets revived, it can't attack the turn it gets revived on. It does still have Summoning Sickness, even though the card remains on the board.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct there. Yeah. He kind of it's actually technically a different card. I can't remember what it's called exactly. It's Sherazim Seed or something like that. But he's dominant until you play 4 spells or play 4 cards in a turn, and as you say, will be exhausted the turn he comes out of that seed. So he can be consistently removed if you're behind on board. That's a key thing to bear in mind.
Osha's in an interesting spot here, because he doesn't know if he's the control or the aggro in this spot very easily. Leeroy's not doing anything particularly quickly, but as rogues do, he's doing a lot of incidental damage and can do a lot more with eviscerates and stuff from an Auctioneer turn. But Osha's hand is not particularly aggressive, so he's got to work out at which point he wants to burst into life. And another of the rogue's new tools, the Vilespin Slayer here, means that he'll save that, and he'll save the petal. Yet another use of this petal is just to trigger cards like this Slayer, which means he can kill massive stuff. However, only massive stuff that doesn't have stealth.
Yeah, so these little leaves underneath the seed, they're going to be the kind of signs of how many cards you've played that turn, and once that gets to 4, it will kind of rebirth.
I could talk about how great that animation is all day, I'm afraid, but I probably shouldn't, because I'll probably get sacked.
It is a pretty one. Bittertide Hydra now going to come down onto the board. If you guys have been underneath a rock, the Bittertide Hydra, it's an 8/8 for 5 mana, which is already just ridiculous. The drawback to that is every time it takes damage, you take 3 damage to the face. So when you see lots of little incremental damages going towards it, you are going to start to see the hero health drop very, very quickly.
And Leeroy has done his homework. He knows what's in this deck. This 8/8, probably the best card there anyway, but the Druid of the Claw is a strong consideration. But this 8-8 is going to just stop Finger dead in its tracks on turn 8. Finger comes down a turn earlier, but you're going to have to run all your Murlocs into the 8-8 just to clear it up. Meanwhile, you're going to be hitting people in the face and generating a lot of damage. Yeah. And he's not scared of a Finger this turn. If Finger comes down this turn, he just hits Osha for a load of damage and waits.
Yeah, he's certainly starting to get to a point as well where you can look at just dropping things like Violet Teacher in preparation for getting combo cards out, and even look towards a combination turn where you can get that Resurrect on the go as well. Finger is going to be the call at this stage, though. With a Bluegill in hand as well, you could look at killing the 3-4 with your Finger and start to get some board presence to deal with.
I'm interested by the Violet Teacher in this deck. They're not necessarily the most common cards in this deck. At least when I saw the meta last, which was like 16 hours ago, and this meta is evolving so quickly, Munch, that could mean anything for the future. You can prep a Vis here to bring your plant back to life. It was a tempting offer, given that he's probably going to play an 8-8 next turn nearly all of the time. It would have, however, put a low health minion on the board.
Yeah, I've got to say, I'm intrigued as to why he didn't do that. I suppose it's like I don't want more fodder for Finger, but you've already made fodder for Finger, so...
He may also just want that 4 damage to hit a minion with, but 4 to face there looked like a chunk, especially makes you a 5-3 threat as well.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what he's trying to save them for. Maybe just wanted to keep Eviscerate to deal with the Finger this turn.
You can see how important it might end up being right now.
Yeah, especially when he's going to start to lose these minions that are on board already. Has his little Runt in hand as well as an option to try and just fill out the mana curve this turn. And that'll actually mean that he can completely clear the board as well. So things are actually starting to look okay here for Osha, but the Ironbark Protector in the hand of Leeroy is certainly going to be a pain to deal with.
But the surprise King Crush is also going to be a bit of a pain. Osha has played with that in mind for the whole game. It's like Leeroy just can't expect it to be King Crush, although he will know there's a surprise card lurking there. So he'll have an idea that it's expensive.
I think the only other adapt that would have been better in this situation would be Poisonous. Well, obviously he's not playing around an Ironbark Protector. Like, you just wouldn't play around that. You're not expecting that to happen.
Right.
But the 3 attack is definitely going to be very convenient for him. It means he doesn't have to trade his entire deck into this one. And also, if he trades in the 5-2 as well as Finger, he gets another couple of Murlocs on the board, could get another War Leader. I don't know what other decks what other Murlocs he's actually running, whether it is just War Leaders and your Bluegills.
So this turn we will see, just to interrupt there, sorry Munch, everything but the Ironbark will be played this turn, I'm pretty sure. It's just a case of on what. We might see the coin held back as well, but basically it's going to be done to get rid of everything and revive your 5-3. And then you probably keep the coin back and just pray that you pick up a Gadgets and Auctioneer sooner rather than later.
Yeah, just search for ways back into the game now. Unfortunately, the 5-3 will get traded into this turn. We'll go back into that dormant state, or you'd assume so at least. But it does mean that, you know, you're removing more and more minions. It has to be dealt with once again. You haven't paid any extra mana to get this 5-3 back on the board. This is the value that the Corpse Flower offers you, that Sherazin brings to the game, is that you're essentially now, especially now you've got it a second time, the value from this card is insane from this point in the game.
Right, people thought that this card might end up... I think the jury was out, but people felt it might be poor just because it only has 3 health, so it's pretty easy to kill. But it turns out that just nibbling away the occasional, he just killed a 3-3, it killed something earlier, just slowly eating his resources over the course of a game in Rogue, where Rogue is already doing a resource management job on you. Just turns out to be just too much to deal with. But talking of too much to deal with now, Leeroy may well have to throw down the Ironbark and just hope the top card of his deck is Auctioneer. Hear Rogue crying about Auctioneer all the time. 2014 is still calling, where's my Auctioneer to me.
I have to say, Leeroy's face, he looks very upset about the King Crush coming out because it's a Hunter card in a Druid deck, but he did just play an Ironbark Protector from his Rogue deck.
It seemed pretty much 50-50 balance to me, that one.
Yeah, they both get a massive 8-8 kind of beat stick to play with.
So Leeroy's about halfway through his deck. He will have some card draw in there, and he will also have Auctioneer. Auctioneer is the card he needs to survive into. And now he needs to work out how he can keep things back to play for Auctioneer. We might see him here we might see him here just not deal with this at all, so that if he does draw the Auctioneer, he can win the game. And possibly even a second Eviscerate if Osha gets a little bit greedy here. Very, very close to lethal. Mark of Charge is 2. There's 10 on the board, plus 13. Total. 19 in total. Thank you, sir.
But it's not enough quite. He's going to mark your Sarge.
That's 21 in total.
Oh, 21,
right?
Sorry, yeah, I can't count. But he is going to drop the Hydra, I'd assume, here. However, do you? That's really risky. 11 HP. There's 2 1-1s on board already.
He's got Backstab and Eviscerate in hand. You could Backstab the Hydra for 3 to the face. Eviscerate would be 4 more to the face. That's 7.
Yeah, that's enough.
You've got to be careful. You've got to kill these 1-1s if you drop the Hydra. You've got to kill the 1-1s if you drop the Hydra. Otherwise, you are in a world of Hydra stuff. You get dehydrated. I don't know what. There's going to be a word that works there somewhere.
You're in a world of dehydration. Terrifying situation to be in. But looks like he's going to clear away the 1-1s. Correct move to make, for sure.
Seems good. Eviscerate would be lethal. This is lethal, I think.
Ooh, that is lethal. He's got it, yeah.
Backstab for 3. Leeroy for Leeroy.
With the Eviscerate.
He can't believe it. And yeah, the showman in Leeroy is coming out. And here we go.
Solid A Lamau there from Leeroy, I believe. He's just going to drop the Leeroy.
No, you've got to backstab the Hydra. Leeroy,
hello, Leeroy, he says. As he drops the Eviscerate, he's going to backstab the Hydra as well. And smack that on into face.
And like Rogue players love to do, casting preparation for no reason whatsoever other than to show us the animation. And he is actually hyped.
That's why he played it. He wanted his plant to be alive again.
Yeah.
2-0. Hello, Leeroy, kicking things off here. He is looking for qualification right now. Hello, Leeroy. 2-0 in the group stage, and now 2-0 in the series. He is a singular game win away from making his way into the double elimination.
And more importantly, making my prediction correct.
That is true. Osha, you got to get it together. I really want Osha to make it in. I feel like Osha is still going to make it into the double elim even if he doesn't win today. But Leeroy is just looking on top of things. Shaman remaining. We've seen a lot of players raving about Elemental Shaman, about how strong it is. I've heard a lot of people mumbling about 90% win rates on ladder and such like. Obviously, to get that kind of win rate, you do have to play particularly well as
Sure, and there's a lot of small sample size tweets going around at the moment. And the problem is, when I think I touched on this earlier actually, but I can't remember what earlier was anymore. So let's do it again for the people who didn't hang around.
It's been a while since earlier.
When you see the pro players tweeting out their results, pro players happen to be good at this game, so they just build a deck and win with it, and then everyone goes, "Oh, that's a great deck." Well, it might be. Yeah, it might not be.
I mean, we were talking about it with the Ungara packs as well, right? You see a pro player open an Ungara pack, and they've got like 5 golden legendaries. I'm pretty sure there's a Blizzard conspiracy or something, but everything seems to just go right for pros. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like the Purify Priest we were talking about off the stream earlier. It's like when you play it, it just feels like garbage, and you never quite find the right combos of cards. When you see someone play it on stream, they find the perfect combo in the starting hand every single game.
It's almost like they mulligan better than us or something much.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so Shaman mirror match. I assume, having not played much Shaman, I'm going to throw it all to you because I know you've played millions and millions of games.
I won't go as far as millions and millions.
How do you feel? This feels like it must be very similar to the old Priest mirror where it's very tempo-based, and if you get rolling, you keep rolling.
Yeah, it is absolutely a game of tempo. There's quite a few taunts in this deck, which, you know, it hasn't necessarily been the case. Obviously, Feral Spirits and Thing from Below have been staples within Shaman. No Feral Spirits in this one, though. That's kind of been replaced by Tar Creeper, because it's a bigger one. It's a bigger minion for the same cost. There's no overload, and actually has more attack, so it's kind of, you have to trade more into it to actually deal with it.
And Leeroy is playing the Fire Plume Phoenix, which is basically SI7 agent for elementals. It costs 4, it's a 3/3, it does 2 damage, and it's an elemental. Pretty good. The whole deck basically is kill a guy, make a guy. It's like Rogue, but slow and clunky, except it's really powerful as well.
I don't think clunky is the word I'd go for with
I hate the word clunky anyway.
It's definitely a deck that if you can curve well, you can certainly make things happen. I would expect, yeah, he's going to keep this Flame Elemental in his hand because it means that the turn before he needs to activate an Elemental, he can weave that 1 mana card into his turn and make sure that he's going to be able to get those effects off of his Elementals.
And this is one of the differences between the Flame Elemental, we make the Priest parallels quite often with this deck, and say the Twilight Whelp, where Twilight Whelp, you have to decide on turn 1, do I want to play this or do I not? Do I want to keep it as an activator? With the Firefly, you just put it on the board and get an Elemental in your hand anyway, so that decision can be delayed till you've got more information and you can still develop your board. Doesn't seem particularly fair.
Well, as we said before, this is definitely a deck that likes to play on curve, and the curve is looking pretty good for HelloLeeroy right now. You can drop Tark Reaper now, you can drop the Phoenix the following turn. He doesn't have a perfect turn 5, but then he's got 2 options for turn 6 as well. However, Jade Claws coming on down here is going to not be the best situation for Leeroy, and Osha has well and truly got control of the board at this stage.
I think Leeroy may be very tempted to Jade Claws this turn to get that overload out of the way as Kalim Moss, Primal Lord, comes into the hand. This gets everything out of the way. This is a really awkward turn for Leeroy, but when that overload is out of the way, he can play the Phoenix next turn, whichever 6-drop he needs on turn 6, into Aya and another Elemental on 7, into Kalim Moss on 8, and like you say, you want the curve? He's got the curve.
He certainly has, especially using that overload. It means that this 4-mana Phoenix in his hand now is actually fitting his curve a lot better than it would have in any other situation. And actually has a nice target to finish off with that effect as well, with that Battle Cry. And now the tempo officially belongs to Leeroy. Taking a look in the hand of Osha, though.
He needs to draw some big stuff because this small stuff is not going to last long against this whole swathe of massive minions. And he does not draw a big stuff. He draws a very late Bloodsail Corsair. That probably will have a patches attached, which will mean the Flame Tongue can be played and clear up the Phoenix. But even so, Flame Elemental, Aya into Calibox. This is looking really bleak for Osha. He needs to draw some big stuff in the next 2 or 3 turns.
He certainly does. That taunt is going to delay things at least. I have just had an update from production as well. Apparently off stream, Ness versus Pyman has been happening. And Ness managed to win that one 3-1.
Okay, so Ness starting to...
Correction, actually, sorry, 3-0.
3-0. So Pyman, who is the MVP of week 1, falling to 1 and 2. Ness goes to 2 and 1. He is 1 match away from making the top 8 in his first appearance in the Premiership, backing up some of his words on Twitter over the last few months with action.
Yeah, and we'll be matching the scoreline of whoever loses out in this current series. Now, we see this awkward moment when you're playing the Elemental Shaman in the Osha, in the hand of Osha. He hasn't played an Elemental last turn, so again, he has another minion that can't quite get the full value. Luckily, he has things to fill out his curve this turn, and now looking into future turns, he'll be able to drop down that Stone Shaper. But Aya, always going to be a great card to play on turn 6, turn 7, and weaving in that Flame Elemental, like we were talking about earlier, means that the Primal Lord will be available for turn 8.
And he will be doing primal things, most likely because Osha is still failing to pick up big stuff. And again, he has time, but most likely choosing to do 3 damage to each enemy minion and just doing a whole bunch of disasters. You don't do disasters. Disasters happen to you, but you know what I mean.
You say that. I've done a disaster or 2 in my time. But this is a really uncomfortable position for Osha right now because he's well aware that if HelloLeeroy has Kalim Moss, his board is in a whole heap of trouble. And realistically, in that situation, with a hand like that, there's not a massive amount of ways to play around that. You just kind of have to deal with it.
And then next turn, just in case things weren't bad enough, Jade Lightning plus another Jade Lightning should tidy up any remaining mess. There's all the options on the screen there.
Yeah, these are not randomized. These are the same options every single game. Generally speaking, deal 3 to all enemy minions is often the best option available, just because, you know, board control is pretty important in this game, it turns out. But I have seen situations where others are, I mean, obviously, 6 burn damage to face can often just win you the game on the spot.
Yeah.
Or if you're playing like some kind of token deck, or you're running Bloodlust and it's already in your hand, you know that they don't have AoE. Filling the board with 1/1s can be devastating.
And the good news for that is it means you can play the mid game without having to plan too carefully about where you want to be going into turn 8. You just need to be somewhere.
Yeah.
You need to pick a direction and stick to it, and then Kalimos will just clear up the mess for you.
So there's a fairly decent board available right now for Osha. No spell power in the hand of Leeroy. I wouldn't be surprised to see Blood Mage in this. I've seen Blood Mage in a lot of variants of this mid-range deck. However, he's going to have that Maelstrom Portal. I'll see. I don't think he's going to roll a totem. I think he wants to use a Jade Lightning as well as the Maelstrom.
Yeah, this clears everything but the tiny things. If he totems, he should have totemed first, but even so. And yeah, thumbs up to the camera, I think means, hey, I'm going to win, and B, whoops, I should have done that first. It doesn't really matter, but it may have changed his move. And Osha just picks up nothing for the whole game, to be fair.
Yeah, this has been some very Osha draws. This is looking like Season 1 and 2 Osha rather than Season 3 Osha, with the fact that he's just really not been finding many of the useful cards that he actually needs. I feel like I'm just playing it up to, oh, he got unlucky, never mind.
He did have a pretty rough game on this particular game, but as a seasoned campaigner, as you just described him, he'll be back next week trying to get to the top 8, and who knows, he might be playing Ness, and what a matchup that would be.
That would be an intriguing matchup, to be sure. But now 13 damage on board, as well as 5 from the Jade Lightning.
Leeroy actually paying attention. I keep mentioning this, but last week he did just punt a game. And even though he's in a 1 position here and he was getting all excitable, he is actually paying attention when it matters. And I think that's important if Leeroy is going to get through the top 8 and get through the top 4 and prove to everybody what we know about him already, that he is one of the best players in the UK.
I have to say, this new 1-drop comes out of Maelstrom Portal a lot more than I feel like it maybe should. I've seen it a lot of times out of Maelstrom Portals. But this game, unfortunately for Osha, looks all but over. That Hex is going to be just about too little.
Jade Lightning to the face will seal the deal if he wants it to. And Leeroy takes it down. What's the score, Munch?
That happens to be a 3-0, just like HelloLeeroy's standings in this tournament. HelloLeeroy is our first qualifier.